So, this conversation is about a few simple brushes that can help you, certainly for project three, but for all I know, to really polish off um, project 2-2. And I wanted to make a point that up here in the top of my brushes, I mentioned that we have this little V, right? So, I personally would use my pen tool, right? And I would decide, how to create that V. Not like that, okay? And then you'd really want to make it black as a placeholder, but it would be obviously the stroke with no fill. You would also, I guess we really do want the stroke menu open because we really want to decide when we make the brush, what will the stroke be, the stroke width. So that's also a good one to have open. And then another thing that I do is I sometimes, not sometimes, I grab these top points, this one, and hold the shift key, and this one, and I will top align them so they're exactly on the same plane. Because sometimes I work fast and maybe even a little carelessly. That is going to be dragged in to our brushes. And when you drag it in with the selection tool, it goes to the bottom. And we're going to do a pattern brush and click OK. It shows you how it's going to look. I typically do not, where that little right angle is, I'm going to show you to turn that off for the moment and click OK. So that's a V. And then I use tints for now to recolor it. So I don't know if you find that hard or easy, but I just, I I made a V and I aligned the top points. What I love to do is make a page of these in a sort of a playful way. So that's the brush I made. And then what I love to do is I always have then nothing selected and I make a nice line. Oops, I hold the shift key so I make it nice and straight. Okay, enter to get rid of that end if that's an easy way. And then I want to see what that brush looks like. And it's the very last brush we created at the bottom of the brushes. Oopsie. Big brush menu there. So select your line, select your brush. This is an important thing to note. I mean, really important. So you noticed I made the brush in the direction I thought would be the right direction, right? But there's a funny thing about this. So I'm going to duplicate it. Oh, that's a nice thing you could do too. You could distort them. I need to get my double arrow. I'm going to rotate it holding the shift key 90. I'm going to put it in my brushes, do the same old story, pattern brush, tint. Okay. I'm going to double that line, but I'm going to apply. Oh, by the way, I didn't need that corner join for now. So this is a little mysterious, right? It's like if you want it, right? So what happens if I just so you want to just practice your lines. So if this is going to be the bottom of a shirt or a sweater or something, then just make sure you're clear. So that went that way, but if we turn the line, it does have to turn. And then if we put it in this direction, then obviously you have to just pay attention to the directions, right? We put it in that way and we go to this one, it'll go that way. So just note the directions that these go, I guess is my point there. And also, if you use tints, you should be able to pick up any color stroke. So that's important if you need a blue one or a red one or whatever. No fill, and a colored stroke. That's the benefit of tint. Then if you want to scale that on the line, that's where we spoke about physically you could do that, but it's going to scale it on all like lines. So this is a matter if you applied a stroke or leave stroke. If you say leave stroke, nothing happened. It thinks it's helping you. So be very alert when you try to manipulate these. And so to readjust it, we can click OK. There we go. So when you do that the second time, it only scaled this line and not that line. It's a little fussy. See, now it's addressing everywhere where that brush is. So play with that. And again, the reason I did tints is so that you could recolor it readily, easily. That's a V. Let's look at another one. Just doing a little time check here for myself. 10:19, okay. So let's look at these. I did before you came. All right, so what is this funny little thing here? It's really not a big deal thing. It's I actually made a V. Let's just say we want a perfect sort of wide V to start out, so we know that everything is kind of even. That's one thing you could do. You could also, with these kind of things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if you're finding yourself confused about how to get perfect symmetry, you can use your arrow keys and nudge. So that's the idea of the V, right? But you also learned you've got a convert anchor where you can use that little convert anchor tool that I keep going like peace but upside down, and you can pull it to get the little curve. And then the white arrow, if you want it skinnier, 1, 2, 1, 2, oops, I'm moving this one up with the arrow, oops, right? So you can use your arrow and the white arrow on the keyboard and to nudge, and you can use your convert. The convert will turn it back to a point, or the convert will allow you to round it. Okay, so if you only put this in to brushes, you would get, let's do a pattern brush. Let's let it open. We don't need a corner. So I turn that off. Let's say tints. So it'll take on a color and we say, okay, right? We've got that now, that last brush. You can even name your brushes, of course. So let me make another line down here where I could see. Also, you could use a pencil, but I typically make a straight pen line to demonstrate. I'm very often, you might also see me do this, right? Both directions, because I just like to see them in both directions. You pick your line and you put your new brush. This could be very effective to affect little knit cables or knit stitches too. And then remember, we can scale that. And it does it in both directions. So that's like a little letter U versus a V. But what's really quite sweet is like here, like right, I could also make them tip to tip, you might say, right? So that could be a select, excuse me, object transform. We've done a lot of the reflecting and copying. And you've noticed on my computer, sometimes it doesn't work the first time, which is creepy. Um, well, everybody who says Adobe is totally perfect, it's not. I'm rotating it because I'm annoyed. I'm going to just align them, center align to make sure they're, and then this one is when you take your two little cute little loops, half loops, and you decide to do this kind of thing, right? Make sure you look at them. They really do need to be aligned. And maybe this one might even need to be flipped. So that, because it's a little off. Object, transform, reflect, but in this case, it would be the vertical, oops, horizontal. There we go. And then that can become your brush. So you can do these little loopy things. And I just figure the more I show you them, you'll get some ideas. It'll make you better at this process. Tint. And then, of course, the really fun part that you see me do is, go to a place where you can even copy the line and then you put your new brush. Right. So it's kind of a loopy thing. And then the loveliest part about it is that you can play with the scale on a garment, right? So what I did, the other thing, of course, apply is that you can change the colors with the tint. So all you need to look at is how some of these were crafted, and then you too could. Right, so I did the little U and then the overlap. This is a funny little thing, right? These are two of them. What if you have two, but you offset them? That's all that was, and then that becomes an odd little S thing right here. Um, it's not super useful. It's just S's until you start getting it very tiny, and then it kind of disappears and looks like a little textured thing. So when it's small, it's rather nice. When it's large, it's not so nice. So that's something to think about. This little cutie makes the chain. As long as they're flat, blunt on the ends, cut off perfectly. So that brings us back to where you sometimes have to have a box behind it. Um, you could have cute little shapes like that. Hand tool, remember to move around your screen. Little teardrops, right? I did here a tear, one over the other, right? One teardrop and then the teardrop in the opposite direction. And I overlapped them to get that kind of fancy little loopy thing. um Little like a Celtic kind of design, but look what happens if you just don't, that could be another interesting braiding or a little rope kind of idea you might come up with. And in particular, if you were to rotate it, right? So that's a question of just sort of having two lines of it in two different directions and maybe turning it, because when you turn something, it starts to look a little different. I don't know. It could be a little trim, a little border, and we'll do more of these for the next project. So the little teardrop, like simple ways to achieve that kind of shape, you could start with a circle, for instance, and you could use your convert anchor, and you could pull this to a little, oops, you could convert it to a angle, and then you could pull it. So that would be a pure teardrop that we could drop. That's a circle, right? That's what that looks like. I'll do that again. So that's a circle. And I simply did a circle, perfect, pure circle, no big deal, right? You know how to do that. The convert turns a curve to an angle. That's kind of cute. And then I wanted it more teardroppy. And then you could make it skinny or chunky, right? And then I just dropped it in as a brush. So what happens if we apply it to a line? That's my favorite thing, is to always make the line and see the result. So I love to go like that and end the line, of course, and then I put the brush on. I often love to then, rotate what happens if it's like really, really cute little things, and I put them all together. And then really what I love to do is shrink them the way they would look on the garment, tiny little things around a collar. So sometimes you can get them to look like different types of stitches without a lot of effort, and that's got tint. This one here, that so you could do the teardrop that way. You could also do any loop you want, right? Like, so I mean, click, click, pull, right? That's not a complex thing. Or click, click, pull, right? That's a simple pull. You could object, transform, reflect, copy. That's another way. And the other thing about this kind of little stitch, you can kind of overlap them so you get that weird little twisty. You can play with these. I don't know, you may not like that lump there. So maybe don't overlap them too much. If you overlap them, one nice thing though you could do is join them. But anyway, let's see what just happens if we take that in with the little overlap. And then, so whatever you put in, is my point was to tell you a little bit more about these, and then one last one. Um, so the direction you put them in is the direction that you'll, right? So that's kind of this guy. This is a simple one, right? I don't have to do that for you. I use the polygon, but you could do, that's a hexagon. You could do a seven-sided thing and make a brush, whatever it is you need to do. Okay. This was a little bead or a pearl, and all I did to do that one was a circle. And I used a gradient fill. And the gradient is located here. And the gradient opens up a menu. And I like, for beads or little buttons like that, to use the circular one. You could play a lot with the gradient, but I'm just going to show you the very quick. If you try to make a brush of it like that, it won't let you, and you're going to be annoyed. There's a step you have to do. They become too, oh, wait, did it take it? No. The selected artwork contains an element that cannot be used. It doesn't like gradients, but there's a way around it to fake it, and I'll just show you. You don't have to remember all this, but it is recording, and you don't have to use this for this project, but you'll have to know it. You could just expand it so it's like a 5-color thing, like a little bullseye. Let's just pretend. That is something that can go in. And you'll not really know the difference. And so here I'm going to just take the pencil and kind of, that's the line. And let's see what happens. See, so this is where corner joins could be important for you. You might want to play with the corner joins. The corner joins are important if it's big and if it's going to have a lot of, but if you make them quite small, you're not going to have quite as much issue. But that could be the strap for a purse. So I'll go back to that another time, but that's another way we could look at these details with a little gradient. All right, let me move to another page. This is an awesome page, and I'll come back to that one. Where's this one? This one I do think I showed you briefly, and it's super important because you're more likely going to have little gathers and things. So let me just quickly remind you how. So this is called a purl edge stitch here. This is a little scallop. Let's look at how a scallop turns out. Right, that's how that person made that scallop. So the question is like, how do you want to how do you want to craft your scallop? Right? Do you know what will your scallop look like? And there's a lot of different ways it could look. But the main thing that I like to say on just the simplest level is to align top, oops, to align the top points so that they're on the same plane. I'm really having trouble now. I'm not sure where that's going because if they're not aligned and you put them into your brushes, you'll have a little problem. So that's a new scallop, different than the other scallop. Right, so that's not so bad. It's just a slightly different little cute little doohickey. And then you have to decide if you want them to overlap, you have to do that clear transparent box behind. So that would bring us to the last one. Or it doesn't have to be the last one, but this is the one I showed last time. I don't know if you remember, but I wanted to make it a point that this is like really pretty, right? This gets to be very attractive when we go to a small version of it. So if we do our line, you could also do these on different layers if you're more comfortable. So if you do the line and you apply the shirring, right, or the shirring, and we go click, whether it's tinted or not, but always when it gets really little, it's going to want to apply it to your other one. It thinks it's helpful. It's like a two-step process of annoyance. But anyway, that's right. So what I did was I showed you that the pen tool is really the easiest way to get these kind of effect. You could look at a piece of shirring on a photo, or if you have something. Same for gathers. And again, I did a little like that. And then I didn't actually click back. I just used that little curvy dude to make that little funny curve. That's all I did. And then at a certain point, you can maybe double it up and rotate it. So you could use it twice perhaps, and maybe even, so you might get a little mileage out of one of them. And then you can use your pen again for a little, right, a little bend. And maybe you come up this way and you play, right? You're playing with what you're learning. Right? So I do a series of these kind of things. And oftentimes I'm not quite satisfied with the spacing between them. So I'll definitely take my little, arrows and nudge. One thing that's super important, and I think it has to do with my layers, is you can top align them, and you can then also, some of them you might want to instead bottom align, like maybe this one and this one. It's not a perfect science. This is art, right? You're becoming a detail. Right. So if you need, so what happens if we just grab these, right, without doing anything else and we put them in? Will that, without a clear, transparent box behind them, will that be sufficient? Sometimes the answer is yes. Okay, so that's my new one, my new little, and you're going to make beautiful ones of your own, and you're not going to need me to help you anymore. You're going to be free to do your thing. Right? You know, my famous line that I like to see what I did and I go to my brush. It's possible I really should have the square because these two butt up too close. See how none of these butt up and hit each other? But let's see if it really matters dramatically when we go to the small, right? A lot of it has to do with what does it look like when it's on the little. I think I better fix it, frankly. And it should have no fill, by the way. So when you make them, try to remember, make it without a fill. So each of these little cuties I should select, and they really should all have no fill and a black stroke. That's really the best way to make your brushes. And I didn't even realize I had a fill on. So start there and then make sure your fill is, and then let's delete the bad one, the crummy one, and dump it in the little garbage can. Probably if I worked, um, right, I worked fast. So at least now that one is a proper one with no fill. Right? They curve nicely. So what I was going to just say as a wrap up is that that clear, transparent box can really be extremely necessary. And so what I do is I zoom in and I have no stroke and I have black. I try to build a box. It has space on the left side, so that's this going to be the space between. Whatever space is between them will be the space that it is the end of the repeat. Then I fill it with clear transparent, then I object arrange it and I send it to the very back. And the important part is that that entire thing becomes the brush, including the clear transparent box at the back. Do we want the edge? Okay, I'll keep the edge this time. And then tints, okay, fine. So we have two versions of that, one without the space. Let's steal that one and let's put the new one with all space. The space between this end and this end gives us perfect spacing. What's really fun then is to see how pretty it can look. Those are the, I could do 30 of those. You could too in no time. And because it's on the tint, we can have a pretty color. It can go around a little waistline. Oopsie, that's a move, by the way, that I keep hitting accidentally. Um, are there any questions? Some of these do get harder, obviously. I don't have a lot of time for all the fancies, but you can look and see a little square, all these very nifty, interesting, right? Different little cute things. You could Google library of brushes and see if you can find some that you can download and try. This is also easy stuff, but we'll wait. Feel free if you need to try gradients and other things to, but we'll do it for project 3. And that's it.